right, and we are back with another exciting episode of the College Tailgaters, and what a show we got for you. Obviously, the biggest news is the coaching carousel, the Tennessee fiasco. It's been a hell of a week for those guys over there. We had a weekend of games that people were not even focused on the whole week, and then now the playoff committee has given out their playoff, and it's quite fun. It's quite debatable. We'll talk about all that right now. I am Chris America. You can find me at Chris Scout Team, and of course my co-host coming to us from Grand Island, Nebraska. How you doing over there, buddy? Mr. Sean
I'm
Daly.
doing good. Yes, sir. Name's Sean Daly, and like you said, I'm in Grand Island, Nebraska today, which it's a misleading name because there's nothing grand about this place, and there are no islands here. But you can find me.
Islands at all in Nebraska?
I didn't see any on the way in. I don't know if there's like a lake with maybe like. I don't know.
With like a sandbar in it or something?
Maybe, yeah. But,
All right,
yeah, you can find me.
Though, buddy. Go ahead.
Oh, you're good, man. You can find me on Twitter at Tailgater Sean. You can find the podcast at Tailgaters Pod. And, yeah, like you said, what a week. Tennessee, I mean, man, this story keeps going and going. So last week, it seemed like Schiano had the job locked up. And then kind of as we were recording, we found out there might be a little more to it. The reports out there that he had covered up the child rape at Penn State, and we took those kind of as fact. I took them as fact. They were from all those blue checkmark people on Twitter. And it turns out that wasn't really the case. There was some third-hand information, a lot of conflicting testimony, and he was never charged with anything, never tried civilly for anything. But yeah, they ran him right out of town.
Yeah, there was a wild night. Last Sunday we were recording, and everything was happening as we're recording, and I'm searching out and following Twitter. Both of us kind of were while we're both going back and forth talking about the show. And at the time, everybody believed that that was the case, that Greg Schiano knew about what was going on at Penn State with the whole Sandusky thing. And so we kind of went with it. We have a disadvantage being a podcast because we record and then we don't post till the next day. We record Sunday night and then we post the next day. And then sometimes people don't even listen till Tuesday, Wednesday. So we sometimes will sound like idiots because when Tuesday comes around, the story's changed 15 different times.
Us sounding like idiots has nothing to do with when the podcast is released or when people listen to it.
Hey, man, I'm trying to give us an excuse, okay? I'm trying to buy us an out.
All right, go ahead.
But, yeah, so, I mean, at the time, you and I didn't know the case of Sandusky and how I didn't even know Greg Schiano even worked for Penn State until this whole thing came about, to be honest with you.
Until it was painted on a rock?
Until it was painted on a rock, yeah. Tennessee's been doing the whole social media thing from a rock since the beginning of time, it appears, and they just haven't stopped. They don't get their news from Facebook or Twitter. They have a rock that they paint on, which, you know, more power to you guys in Knoxville.
Yeah, it was actually written in stone, right, that Schiano covered it up. According to them there, they wrote it on a rock. So, but yeah, since then, we've seen Jeff Brom from Purdue accept and then get the job taken away and then turn it down. We saw, Dave Dorn out at NC State with kind of the same thing. Mike Gundy. I mean, the list goes on and on.
The Mike Gundy thing, I think, is the worst because we'll talk a little bit about Scott Frost and what kind of race he got and why he took the job at UCF, and we'll debate that a little bit later. But when you offer a guy double your salary, and we're not talking like, hey, you make $500,000, we'll double it to $1 million. No, we're talking you make $4 million now, and we'll double it to $8 million. And the guy still says no. Man, that's embarrassing, if you ask me.
Part of the craziest thing with all that to me was why are they going after Brom and Leach, who I think are, and Gundy, who are good coaches? Why did they go after Schiano first? Like, if you just remove the whole Penn State from his, background, he's nowhere near the coach that Jeff Brom is, that Mike Gundy is. Why were these guys your B and C choices? It didn't make any sense.
Maybe it was one of those, I don't know, like it was the guy that we know would say yes kind of deal. A lot of teams have to kind of do that now. You don't want to go through what Tennessee's going through now where you approach all of these coaches and they say no. And then maybe the other thing too was, wow, we really swung out on Schiano. It was really bad, so now we have to hire somebody better. And that's why you're going to Mike Gundy with double the salary of what he's making now. I don't think anybody would offer Mike Gundy double the salary. You can make an argument the same with Mike Gundy as you can with Schiano. I mean, Mike Gundy's a good coach. He's not great, though. He's not $8 million a year great. He's only won one Big 12 championship in his entire, 9, 10, 11 years that he's been at Oklahoma State. And not Tennessee, but Texas has been down this whole time. It's really just been Oklahoma running the show, so you only have to beat one team to win a Big 12 championship, and he can't get it done. So I don't get why he would be worth $8 million. So it's not like.
Well, keep in mind that Mike Gundy, he's a man. He's 40.
Well, he's 50 now.
Yeah, and he's got the hair.
Mullet.
So that's $8 million for me right there.
Yeah, I mean, there's no better coach to have at the University of Tennessee than a mullet-rocking man who's 50.
Yeah, so this whole fiasco, Curry, the AD, I thought he needed to get his head examined. And it turns out there's been a Game of Thrones-style puppet master behind this whole thing, torpedoing their coaching search. And that is Philip Fulmer, the return of Philip Fulmer, the new AD at Tennessee. What do you think about that?
Well, if you listen to Scout Team Sports, I mean, at the time, I didn't know that he was, like you said, Game of Throning the hell out of this thing and making backroom deals to sabotage everything. But I said that was the move they needed to make. Tennessee right now is in a really bad spot. So what the Volunteers need to do is volunteer the hell out of their administration and coach. You need to go get a guy like Philip Fulmer, who is obviously the last guy to win them a national title, win them an SEC title, have some semblance of greatness for that school. And then what else do you need to do? You need to go get a coach who has volunteer ties. And I said they need to go
Peyton
get
Manning.
Steve Martin. No, not Peyton Manning. He hasn't coached long enough. Although again, if he hired Peyton Manning, I don't think any Tennessee fan would cry or complain about it. They probably think that he's the next Nick Saban.
Yeah, most likely. Hopefully they get this figured out soon for their sake. They've been kind of the running joke on Twitter for, 2 weeks now? So it's about time they get it figured out, get their coach in place, and start moving forwards.
Well, the other part where Tennessee just continuously Tennessees themselves is Thursday night. Everybody was talking about how Mike Leach was now the guy. And then less than 12 hours later, at 9 o'clock in the morning on Friday morning, Curry's gone, and now that Mike Leach story has kind of been at a standstill this whole weekend.
Yeah, I think Mike Leach would be a pretty good coach for them. I love listening to Mike Leach speak. So if I could see him in a press conference, talking about Nick Saban or something, that would just be incredible. Yeah, I think he'd be a good choice. They need to hit a home run with their coaching pick, and he might be the closest they can get to it. At this point, at least, he's the only one who hasn't said no yet.
Right, and Mike Leach is proven in the SEC. He coached as an offensive coordinator at Kentucky, where he had a ton of records broken for offensive production. So it'd be
was he there with the hefty lefty?
I don't know. I honestly didn't know he was at Kentucky until I started researching and prepping for the show about where Mike Leach has been his whole career and what his record was and if Mike Leach would even be considered a good hire. Because Mike Leach is one of those guys where you know about Mike Leach, but do you really watch a lot of Texas Tech or Washington State games? No, you really don't. So you kind of have to research these things to see, is Mike Leach as good as people say he is, or people believe him to be?
Mike Leach is one of, I think it's 2 or 3 coaches in college football who didn't play college or professional football.
I actually like that because I don't think you need to play the sport if you have the mind for it. You see guys like, I don't know, Andy Reid. You know that guy, even if he played a long time ago. He's not giving you any confidence that he knows how to play football now, but the guy is smart. So let's talk about some other fiasco moves. The Jimbo Fisher story. FSU kind of lucked out that the Tennessee fiasco was going on because a lot of FSU fans want to downplay it, especially Mac from Scout Team Sports. But I thought that was a big, gigantic, embarrassing fiasco for Florida State. To have your head coach, who's won you a national title, has been there for 8 years, kind of take a step down to Texas A&M and hold your university hostage for a whole week by not committing to it. And then on, I think it was Wednesday night, they had a call-in show where they're at a restaurant. Every university does this, where the coach goes to a local restaurant to answer questions from fans. And they had to have goons remove a polite fan who wasn't causing a scene, ask about Jimbo Fisher's loyalty. And now Jimbo Fisher escorted himself out of Tallahassee to Texas A&M.
Yeah, I saw someone tweeted, I don't know who, so I can't give them credit for it, but I agreed 100%. It would be like leaving Kate Upton to go date Amy Schumer. Like, it is definitely really a step down. It's not even close.
Yeah.
So we talked about this last week. Like, there has to be something else going on, right? Like, he's scared he's going to get fired next year, and there's not going to be an Amy Schumer to fall back to.
Right.
I know the money's good, but he could have got that money at Florida State.
Yeah. My theory is that last year he was offered by LSU, and I think he was going back and forth and then finally turned it down. And I thought then that he should have left because I've seen FSU on this downward progression the last few years since Winston left. They finished second in their division the year after he left, and then third in their division last year, and now they're at 6-6. So I think once he saw that downward progression was going through, he realized now, I got to get out while the getting's good. Because if I go 6-6 next year, he's fired. I don't care what any FSU fan tells me prior to that, how they are loyal to him. He won them a national championship. No, if you go through another year of 6-6, none of those Florida State fans are going to be happy. And he would have either been fired or whatever. But like you said, he's not going to find another Amy Schumer to fall back onto. Nobody like Texas A&M is going to offer him a job when he goes back-to-back 6-6 or worse. So I think he just got out while the getting was good, and the money was there to get him away.
Yeah, I think I would be down for a Texas A&M Florida State coach swap. I wouldn't mind seeing someone bring the swag copter to Tallahassee.
No,
I think it'd be a pretty good fit.
I like Sumlin, so I don't want to have to root against him.
I think he could do some good things with the recruits that Florida State can pull. But Sumlin is being rumored for another vacancy. We'll get to that shortly. I did like how the Jimbo Fisher news, though, broke by him throwing his Christmas tree out in Tallahassee. I thought that was incredible. Right? What a way to break the story.
Yeah, I tweeted out, like, can't you just donate that to a needy family or somebody who needs a Christmas tree? I remember when I moved into my apartment with my girlfriend, she had a Christmas tree, I had a Christmas tree, so we had to get rid of one. So we just went on Facebook and said to one of those donation groups or whatever, like, hey, we have a Christmas tree. If anybody wants to come get it, come get it. And we got rid of it in like 2 hours. So I feel like he could have done the same.
Yeah, I do like, though, he went for the live tree. That's a classic old school move. I dig it. But, that tree's now in the trash.
No, he didn't chop it down. And he didn't even carry it down to the street.
Yeah.
So now Willie Taggart is the top guy, the coach out of Oregon. He was at USF last year, and he was at Oregon this year. Let's see if Phil Knight wants to get in a bidding war with Florida State.
Yeah, I don't know if they got they obviously have Nike and Phil Knight's backing up there, but Oregon, as good of a program as it is, it's not in the same tier as Florida State. I think if the job's available to him, I think he's taking it.
Well, Florida State's in an interesting and precarious position now because they lost their coach to what's reported as a 10-year, which is ridiculous. I don't know why you would sign any coach to 10 years. But obviously, if you got a coach that just left his other job for you, you want to make sure he's locked up to make sure he doesn't do that to you.
Yeah.
So that's a $7.5 million a year. So 10 years, $75 million. So that's $7.5 million a year. You can't bring in your next guy who might be a good coach like Willie Taggart. I'm not saying he's not good, but you can't bring him in and pay him $7.5 million, can you? Because now you're like, well, why did you let Jimbo Fisher walk?
No, I would imagine he's going to get somewhere in the $5 million range. whether it's from Florida State or whether it's a raise to stay at Oregon. But yeah, you're right. You can't. I mean, he hasn't gotten himself to the level of Jimbo Fisher yet, despite Jimbo having a down year the last couple.
Yeah, you just can't let the guy that won you a national championship. What was it? 4 years ago now? Is it 5? Anyways,
yeah,
you can't let that guy go for $7.5 million and then bring in a new guy who might be an up-and-coming coach. You don't know. But you can't bring that guy in and say, yeah, we'll pay you what we just lost our guy for.
No, like I said, I think it's going to be somewhere in that like $4 to $5 million range for Taggart or kind of anyone of that caliber right now.
All right, well, let's talk about the other big news. The guy that did just sign for $5 million, reportedly, is Mr. Scott Frost. I have so many mixed emotions about this hire. I think the worst was the fact that somebody at Nebraska let it be known in the middle of the fourth quarter that Scott Frost was taking the job. So UCF is in the middle of a conference championship game and a very intense, very entertaining conference championship game deep in the fourth quarter. And ESPN decides, hey, we're going to break this news that Scott Frost will be named the head coach at Nebraska. So you're a UCF fan. You're a UCF player. It's a bittersweet end, is it not?
It is. It seemed almost irresponsible by ESPN reporting it then, by whoever at Nebraska decided it was time to put that information out. I think it is a good fit for him. Obviously, he played there. He's part of that 97 team, that really great 97 team. He's, like we said, he got 7 years, $35 million. So it's a huge pay raise for him. And, he gets to come home, coach the team he loves. I do think it's a classy move that he's coaching their bowl game, though.
Oh, no, I think that's really solid. I remember when Florida hired Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer did the same thing for Utah. I think every coach needs to do that. I have no ill will towards Nebraska other than the fact that it was very tacky, that somebody in there, it had to be them. Obviously, it's not going to be UCF. So it either had to be Scott Frost agent or someone in Nebraska saying, we want to announce that Scott Frost is our head coach. I can't really blame ESPN too much because, I mean, that's their job. They have to be.
Once the info's out there, yeah.
Once the info's out, they can't not report it. I do think Todd McShay was very classless by asking Scott Frost while he's around his teammates. Todd McShay doesn't need to get an answer, and I hate when reporters ask questions that they know what the answer is going to be. There's no other answer to the question of what do you say about Nebraska announcing that you're their head coach. You're not going to get any other answer out of any coach who's done it for 5 minutes that says, I'm just going to go celebrate with my team. I don't want to talk about that right now. You know that's going to be the answer, so why ask a question that you already know the answer to?
Yeah, the whole thing kind of left a sour taste in my mouth. Like you said, it's poor timing. This is a decision that we've all known was kind of in the works for weeks, and to have to release it right then didn't make a whole lot of sense. But there is a coach rumored for UCF, which could keep them going on the up and up, and that is Kevin Sumlin is their top target.
Before we get to that, I did want to make one more point about Scott Frost. You said that it's a really good fit. I think it is a good fit for Scott Frost, the guy, Scott Frost, the person. Right now, until proven otherwise, I don't think it's a good fit for Scott Frost, the coach. One of the things that Scott Frost preached about when he came to UCF was that he wanted speed and he wanted his offense to go fast. One of his little tagline, hoorah moments to get everybody pumped up for what he was doing here at UCF was UC fast. His offense is definitely built and predicated on speed. And that is something that when you're in Oregon, as many people probably don't know, Oregon is a very talented track and field state. There's a lot of track athletes, a lot of speed. I know the national championship, I think, for track and field is held there every year. Prefontaine is from there.
Prefontaine references, huh?
Hell yeah, man. So obviously there's that kind of talent in Oregon. And then there's nothing hidden about the fact that Florida is also known to have a lot of athletes and a lot of speed. So when he goes to Nebraska, Nebraska is not known for that. It's known for those corn-fed boys who are big and strong and powerful, which, again, there's nothing wrong with that, but they're not fast. So he's going to have a hard time getting that speed to come play for him in Lincoln, Nebraska. They don't have that kind of talent in Grand Island, Nebraska. I can guarantee you that right now.
No, they don't, but I think he'll be able to adapt. Like you said, it's the big corn-fed boys up here, the big, it's NFL lines that Nebraska fields. And when he played on that 97 team, running the option behind that line, they're pretty successful. So I think if he can implement parts of that and adapt to the talent that's available to him, because even though they're big and they might not be as fast, they are talented players. So I think he'll be able to adapt and overcome and kind of just make some tweaks to what he does. Maybe form a new identity offensively.
I hope he's able to, but if I'm an advisor to Scott Frost, I would have told him to pick another school that's within the South. Because, I've made no bones about it. The South is the most talented recruiting region, and I've said it over and over again on this show on Scout Team Sports. 26 of the last 40 national champions have come from the South. You look at the playoffs right now, 3 teams in the playoffs are from the South. So the South has a 75% chance of winning the national title this year to make it 27 out of the last 41. But if
you're talking national titles, he had to leave UCF.
No. I'm not saying he had to stay at UCF. I'm saying he should have held out for a job. I mean, I'm a Florida fan. I hate Florida State, but I think he would have a much easier time at Florida State than he would at Nebraska.
Yeah, that's probably fair. I think the home thing had a lot to do with it for him.
Right. And again, like I said, it's a great fit for Scott Frost, the man. Now we got to see if Scott Frost, the coach, can make him work. And I don't think he can't make it work, and I'm not going to say he won't make it work. I just think he's going to have a much harder time doing it. And maybe, like you said, he'll learn to adapt his system to fit the athletes that he's able to recruit out there in Lincoln, Nebraska.
The good news for him is the Big Ten West sucks, so he should be able to win pretty quick.
Yeah. So you sent over the notes to me today, and I see a name, and I've heard it a couple of times this week. I hope this is true. Over at Arizona State, will we get to hear more quotes like, "You play to win the game," Mr. Herm Edwards? Are we going to get to see that?
It sure seems like that. The consensus is that he's going to be announced tomorrow on Monday. And, it's been almost 30 years, I think, since Herm has coached in college. I like Herm. I like the quotes. I like the sweet socks he wears on TV. I don't know how he's going to be able to connect with 16, 17-year-old recruits. And if he's going to have his heart fully in coaching these kids and the whole recruiting process.
Yeah, there's a lot.
It's certainly a big name for them.
There's a lot that's been made and very well documented about college coaches going to the NFL level and not succeeding. But we never really hear about how many NFL coaches come down to the college level and also don't succeed.
Lovie Smith.
It's overwhelming. Lovie Smith. I can think of his quarterback, but I can't think of the coach. The old Miami Dolphins coach that went to Pittsburgh. His quarterback was Gus Frerotte. Why can I not think of...
Former Bears coach Dave Wanstead.
Dave Wanstead. There he is. He went to Pitt. Never panned out. I'm sure there's several other names of NFL coaches that have come back to the college ranks, but I look at guys like Gruden and guys like Herm Edwards, and I just don't think they'll translate.
Yeah, unless they get like a great assistant staff to do like their recruiting for them. Could you see him going, like, doing what Harbaugh does and going to sleep over at kickers' houses so he can, like, get the number one kicker in the country? There's no way Herm Edwards is doing that.
I mean, nobody else is doing that. That is kind of a weird thing that just Jim Harbaugh does.
It was brilliant. You can only have one visit, but they don't say it can be, it doesn't have to be within 24 hours. So if you never leave, it's one visit.
That's true, but maybe you should make that with a quarterback instead of a kicker. But we digress. Let's stick to topic. We don't want to go on a full-on hate mode on Michigan and Jim Harbaugh. Like you said, it's a good name for Arizona State, but I don't see it translating well. I think he's going to lose to now conference champion Todd Helton. and obviously Chip Kelly.
Yeah, it's I mean, I don't know what sort of success level Arizona State expects, but he's probably going to have them, bowl eligible for a couple of years. But if that's like the highest you're aiming, I guess he's the right guy. He'll probably sell some T-shirts and stuff, but I don't know.
I also heard that Kevin Sumlin was rumored for that job too, but you were saying that Kevin Sumlin was rumored for UCF.
Yeah, I've been reading a lot that he's their top target, so UCF has the interest. I think we're waiting to see right now if Sumlin has the interest in UCF. Just like we talked about Jimbo taking a step down going Florida State's A&M, I think despite UCF's success, and despite it being an awesome campus, I think it's a step down for him to go from A&M to UCF.
Obviously, when it comes to level of talent and school and program history, but Jimbo made the choice to take the step down where someone might be forced to make that choice. It's hard when you get fired to find another job unless you're John Fox. Somehow that guy continuously finds jobs.
See if he finds one after this year.
Lane Kiffin, also another one of those guys with 9 lives. He gets fired at different places, fails, and yet somehow people are wanting him to go coach another Power 5 school again. I don't get it.
They wanted Lane back to Tennessee.
Yeah, seriously. So I think with someone, is it a step down? Yes, but if he's going to take a step down, UCF is the best step down you can take. And that's not just me being an Orlando homer. They've won 3 American titles since the American came into existence, either 2013 or 14. I think it was.
Yeah, they won 3 in 5 years.
They've won 3 in 5 years. They had an 0-12 season within that, and all it took was a new coach to come in and turn that ship around. You're in, like I said again, the very heartland of a recruiting mecca when it comes to offensive players and defensive players and athletes that'll all fit Kevin Sumlin's system. And I've said before that UCF needs a guy that has that Power 5 experience, but maybe is burnt out from the fact that, hey, in the modern era at Texas A&M, me, Kevin Sumlin, I'm the second best coach you've had in like the last 50 years, and yet somehow I'm getting fired? That makes no sense. So you have guys that don't want to deal with that BS anymore, and to a certain extent, I can't blame them. So if he were to go down to UCF, where he would be appreciated if he had a 10-win season every year and competed for a conference championship. And one of the things that I thought would be appealing to Scott Frost would also be appealing to Kevin Sumlin, or any coach for that matter, is if you're that guy that when the Big 12 comes to expand, you've made UCF such a desired product that you bring UCF into a Power 5 conference.
Yeah, there's always a chance for that. I think Sumlin, he's still a young guy, so I think he's probably looking for a long-term job, and I don't know if he'd see UCF as that. And I don't know if UCF necessarily wants a guy who might only be there for a year or two, or until his name gets hot again, and then leaves for bigger and better. It would be awesome to see someone go there on some long-term deal and stay there and keep them with some level of sustained success.
Yeah, again, it's hard to say that because none of us really know Kevin Sumlin, and I hate when people assume, oh, this is what I would do, so this is what this guy would do. We'll see what happens. I hope he comes. I hope they get a name like Kevin Sumlin, because
it'd be great for the program.
This UCF train, man, it's going, and it's going full speed, or full steam ahead, and the only thing that can stop it right now is a terrible coach. So anybody can come in and pick up where Scott Frost lost it or left, and just keep it going easily.
Yeah, I'd agree. As long as George O'Leary doesn't come back, I think they'll be in good shape going forwards.
All right, now I've been out of the news today. I haven't been on Twitter or looking at sites. You put in the notes that Gus Malzahn stays at Auburn?
Yeah, so he's been rumored for the Arkansas job for a couple weeks now, which again is similar to the Jimbo situation. Like, why? Why the hell would you leave Auburn for Arkansas? He's got ties there. He's from there. But he just signed a 7-year extension with Auburn. He kept getting asked about it, just like how Scott Frost was getting asked about the Nebraska job. They were asking Gus Malzahn about going to Arkansas, but he signed a 7-year extension to stay at Auburn. He made the right decision, in my opinion. And it'll be exciting to see what they can do moving forwards as well. Despite their loss, they had a pretty good season.
Yeah, when the rumors came up with Jimbo and Gus, I didn't understand either one of them, but I felt like Gus going to Arkansas would be just complete asinine. Unless, again, they gave him a huge contract like Jimbo got. But at least Jimbo had the excuse that his ship is sinking, so he's jumping ship. Auburn just went to
playing for a conference championship, yeah.
I don't understand what's going on here. And it's not like you leave a school where you have to play Saban every year to go to a school where you never have to see. You still have to play Nick Saban, and now you have to do it with lesser talent and a lesser recruiting ground. It made no sense, so I'm glad to see Gus Malzahn stayed.
I think it was a leverage play. He got his 7-year deal out of this. I think that's all he wanted to get.
All right, so we spent 30 minutes talking about coaching carousel, and for good reason, because honestly, this whole week, I forgot that there was conference title games coming, the way the sports world was talking about all of this coaching stuff. So let's talk about these games. We start out with USC versus Stanford. What a hell of a game, and what a terrible coaching decision by Shaw to not kick the field goal when they were down at the goal line. That was the difference in the game.
Yeah, it was a surprisingly great game. I'm usually not a huge fan of the Pac-12 product, but they put on a good show. Sam Darnold, he looked like an NFL quarterback this game. He didn't turn it over. He played a really, really clean game. And they had that 99-yard drive he engineered right at the end of that game that just took the wind out of the sails of that Stanford team. And a lot of people aren't talking about it, but USC had a pretty similar case to Ohio State to try to make the playoff. But all in all, a pretty good end to a season that started kind of disappointing for them. Yeah,
it was the East Coast bias, I think, is what happened to USC, which is surprising because USC normally doesn't get the East Coast bias. Normally,
usually immune.
They're immune to it. They have that LA swag, that the LA media, which is very strong and very influential. And you just didn't see that. It was just Ohio State or Alabama, and I didn't understand why USC wasn't allowed into that argument. A lot of the USC fans were arguing, hey, our 2 losses were on the road against ranked opponents. That's a fair argument compared to Alabama, who has looked suspect all year, and their resume isn't really that good. And then you have Ohio State, who got blown out twice, one at home. So I thought USC had an argument, and that's where I had fun on Twitter today arguing with Alabama or Ohio State fans, just throwing USC in there as a legitimate argument as to why they should be in it.
Well, this will teach
even a concern because they weren't even in the top 6.
Yeah, well, this will teach USC. Maybe next year instead of Notre Dame, they'll schedule Mercer
or UNLV.
Yeah, either one.
Or Army.
Who's Alabama got in November next year? I think it's the Citadel.
Yeah, and I'm sure there'll be another 39-point favorite over Rutgers for Ohio State. But we digress. Hell of a game. Hats off to USC. I think.
Hats off to Bryce Love playing through that injury.
Oh my gosh, I feel like he
Warrior.
deserves the Heisman over that. Like that guy, his Heisman moment was getting 130 yards or whatever it was, playing with that swollen leg, cut up, beat up, and just giving his all. To me, that's more of a Heisman moment than grabbing your crotch after you threw for 500 yards against Kansas.
Yeah, well, Baker Mayfield did his thing again this week. But, yeah, Bryce Love, and they said he wasn't even getting injections. He was only taking, like, oral pain medicine. It was incredible. But, yeah, he'll have his spot deservedly so for the Heisman ceremony.
I feel like Bryce Love is the type of guy who just slams BC powder with no water and then just puts the helmet on and gets back in there like a real man.
Yeah, how about these, Stanford running back now churning out McCaffrey, and now it turns out his backup is maybe even better than he was?
Yeah, seriously, and I watched my Panthers today. We need to replace Jonathan Stewart, and I would love to see the Panthers, draft Bryce Love in the first round next year. I don't think it'll be high enough to get him, but man, what a player. You know who else was a player? this kid named Miller on Memphis, the wide receiver.
Oh, yeah.
Man, did he ball out. And this was one of those games where even if you had a rooting interest in either team, you hated to see the other team lose because both of these teams gave their all. And I'm interested to see how this game drew as far as ratings goes. Because I don't know anybody who watched the Big 12 championship yesterday. Everybody I saw, whether they were associated with UCF or not, was watching that UCF-Memphis game.
Yeah, I mean, it's another Game of the Year candidate for UCF. They're second in a row. I would say, for me, they've had two of the top three games this year, going along with the Ohio State-Penn State game from earlier. Yeah, I had a rooting interest in this game, and it was the over, and that was awesome. But, I mean, what else could you ask for? Tons of points scored. Memphis had a chance to win this game with a late field goal. College overtime is the best overtime. It's how the NFL should do it. It's how every level of football should do it.
Yeah. The only thing I would change about college overtime is I'd move the ball back 10 yards to the 35-yard line. I feel like you got to earn field goal range. But other than that, it's fantastic.
But, yeah, great game. UCF, what a season for them, and I'm really looking forward to the UCF bowl game.
Yeah, we really talked a little bit about how bad it was that ESPN and Nebraska announced it. I listened to the after-game press conference with the players and Coach Frost, and it sounded like a damn funeral, man. It really did rob it, but I give Scott Frost and UCF credit. As soon as the announcement was truly fairly made and he got to talk to the players, UCF sent out a tweet and just a thank you to Scott Frost and all that he did. And then Scott Frost thanked the community. I've been saying it since he became a candidate for the Nebraska, that Scott Frost truly does love the Orlando area. He loves UCF and he loves these players. We hate to see him go, but it was awesome to see how the players recovered to truly, really celebrate this. And like we said earlier, to take them to the bowl game is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's a historic season. They're the only undefeated team in all of college football at the Division I level. So, I mean, what else can you do? The Peach Bowl is going to be awesome this year. And I really hope they can show up again on the national stage like they have the last 2 weeks.
So I talked about ratings, and I said if UCF and Memphis draws better ratings than Oklahoma TCU, the Big 12 championship, then the Big 12 on Monday needs to send UCF and Memphis invites to their conference.
Yeah, I don't know what the Big 12's doing putting that game at 12:30. And if TCU had won, I'm sure the Big 12 would have regretted having a title game at all.
Right.
But yeah, that game, nothing to write home about. It was kind of what I expected. I'm not sure if it's what you did, but Mayfield shows up again on the national stage, same as every week.
Oklahoma ran TCU off the field their first game, and I didn't expect anything really less. I don't think TCU has the talent or the wherewithal to make adjustments and come out and make a better play against Oklahoma. Oklahoma is going to be a dangerous team for Georgia to play because Georgia showed that they struggled and got blown out by a very average quarterback at Auburn in Stidham. Man, Baker Mayfield, if they come out like they did it at Auburn, man, he's going to have a field day with that Georgia defense.
Yeah. What was it, like the Orange Bowl or something like 2 years ago where Mayfield totally collapsed? And since then, he's just been absolutely dynamite when the lights are brightest. What do you have, 4 touchdowns this game against TCU? I guess the lights weren't that bright since this was like a noon game. But
probably more people were watching UCF Memphis.
Yeah, but this game, exactly what we expected. If you give me Baker Mayfield versus Kenny Trill, I'm taking Baker Mayfield every single time. And is this the end of Kenny football? We don't get to see him anymore?
Maybe he'll end up as like a slot receiver in New England's offense one day, but yeah, I think that's it for him.
Yeah. So the next game on the schedule is SEC. Georgia and Auburn.
Yeah, this game started at 4, and this game kind of let me down.
Yeah.
I think Auburn just really gave everything they had to Alabama. Alabama really beat the hell out of their running back. and they just didn't have that same look that they did 3 weeks ago when they routed Georgia, and Georgia just turned around and routed Auburn. A lot of people can argue that these two weren't the best teams in the SEC, but the way the rules are and everything else, these were the two teams that played for the championship. So we'll get to see if Alabama is truly better because, like we said earlier, they got invited to the playoff, and so did Georgia. When I watched that game, Auburn just couldn't get out of their own way, and Georgia just took advantage of every single mistake they made.
Yeah, the effort that Auburn had to put forth the last 2 of the last 3 weeks, they beat number 1 2 of the last 3 weeks, and to try to play to that level again, that consistently is not easy to do. And like you said, Georgia just dominated pretty much every phase of this game. They forced turnovers, and Fromm, a true freshman, played really well. The moment didn't look too big for him.
Yep, and then once that game ended, we got a little bit of a break to catch our breath, grab some more beers, and roll into the ACC Big Ten championship games. And at first it was a tough decision, which game do I want to watch, but then Clemson made that decision for you.
Yeah, it took about 5 minutes.
It took about 5 minutes, and you were like, okay, I'm heading over to Ohio State game. And at first, the Ohio State game looked like that was going to be decided early. Ohio State was doing whatever they wanted in the first, 20, 25 minutes of that game. How many, didn't they have like 2 or 3 50 or 60-yard rushes?
Yeah, so I think the stat was Wisconsin they'd only given up 2 plays of 50-plus yards all season, and in the first half, Ohio State had 3 of those plays. There was a long catch, there was a swing pass that went the distance, and it just looked like the Wisconsin secondary couldn't keep up with Ohio State's playmakers. And I've talked all year about how Wisconsin-style football is not sustainable, how they rely on scoring, not just forcing turnovers, but scoring off of turnovers, and how at some point the well's going to dry up there. And it didn't. They got another pick 6. They stayed right in this game, and they played them right down to the end. They had 2 drives in the last 4 minutes, which they could have gone down, down 6. They had 2 drives where they could have went down, won the game. But that's hard to do when your quarterback's Alex Hornibrook.
Yeah, you'd even mentioned several times that if Ohio State goes up big early, that Wisconsin's not built to come back. And it looked to be the case, even though that whole entire second half, it was like they were within striking distance of completing a comeback, but it was just so close yet so far the whole entire second half.
Yeah, it felt like they needed a special team score or another turnover or something. If you're relying on that offense to drive you 70 yards down the field and to get 7, not just the field goal, because Gaglione is an excellent kicker they have, but you can't get 3 against a team like Ohio State when they're out there putting up 7 every time.
Yeah, Ohio State gave all they had. They won the Big Ten championship, but didn't seem to be enough. I've been telling you need to start rooting for Wisconsin. That's your best chance of getting the Big Ten in. And it seems like it just wasn't enough. I can make an argument either way. When it comes to this playoff thing, I get in an argument about it for like 2 hours, and then I'm over it and I accept what the playoffs are. And when you can argue either way, it doesn't make a difference to me. At the end of the day, these are 4 of the best teams in the country. Do you think the Big Ten and the Pac-12 being left out while the SEC gets 2 teams in, do you think that'll lead to expansion now? Do you think the Big Ten and the Pac-12 care enough to raise hell about it? Or do you think they just, hey, they like the money they're getting from it now, let's just leave it the way it is?
I think they do raise hell, and I think it will lead to some sort of expansion. I don't necessarily think Ohio State has too much ground to stand on here. When you look at the 4 teams they chose, none of those teams are going to go out and lose by 31 to anybody in the country.
Right.
And that's what Ohio State did. I think Ohio State, when they're playing well, when they're playing the best that they can, I think they're probably one of the top 4 teams in the country. but I think they have one of the lowest floors of any of those top-tier teams where they're capable of playing extremely poorly. And they almost did that in the Big Ten Championship. Barrett got a little careless with the ball a few times, and that's how they lost that Iowa game. He turned it over 4 times that game. He had 2 picks in the Big Ten Championship, and that's what kept Wisconsin right in that game the whole time.
Was it one of them a pick six, too?
One was a pick six. One was he was rolling out, and he threw it to a guy right near the sideline that he shouldn't have thrown. He should have thrown the ball into the stands, and he made a bad throw, and it went off the guy's hands right to the defender. It was just a poor decision. I think Ohio State's in the playoff if they win the Big Ten Championship by 20 points. But
yeah, maybe.
A couple careless turnovers, and, here they are, with a good bowl game, but not in the playoff, not where they wanted to be. And it keeps the streak alive. They've never been a 2-loss team in the playoff.
No, not yet. And I kind of – it sounds like when I give out facts about the Big Ten, it sounds like I'm a Big Ten hater. I'm not a Big Ten hater. I'm just an observer of sports. And I think truly one of the things that weighed on the committee's mind is that the Big Ten champion or the Big Ten representative the last 2 years has not represented well. And Alabama has. Alabama has played for a national title the last 2 years. Obviously, Clemson versus Alabama has a lot of sex appeal. Round 3, I would have liked.
Got a lot of ratings appeal.
I would have liked to have seen that more in a national championship setting than a round 1 setting, but it is what it is. But the Big 12 has lost 69-0 the last 2 playoffs. It's not a good showing. And for the committee, who gets to make up their own rules, I felt like they couldn't give the Big Ten the benefit of the doubt this year with a 2-loss team.
Yeah, it's a dangerous game you play when you start going down these, making it up as you go. Because they have their criteria, right? These check marks that they cross off, and winning a championship, a conference championship, is one of them. Letting programs in on reputation alone, whether it be the Big Ten having lost so badly the last 2 years, or whether it be Alabama, who hasn't looked that good this year, but in years past has been a national contender. This is why I think there needs to be an expansion, and it needs to be set in stone. And the popular idea, and the one I kind of agree with, is all 5 Power 5 champions go. 1 team from the group of 5 goes, and 2 at large. And that's how you get your 8 teams.
I put an extra rule to that. I think that there needs to be a minimum win threshold to qualify for the playoff. So just like with bowls, you need 6 games to be bowl eligible. I think with the playoff, you need 9 wins or 10 wins to be playoff eligible. So that kind of gives us a safety net for when Florida or Tennessee or whoever goes 7-5 and then just somehow miraculously beats a 10-1 or an 11-1 or a 12-0 Alabama, Auburn, LSU, whatever, or vice versa. I don't want to see a
But wouldn't that give it more of a March Madness type feel? Like a Cinderella?
No, I don't need a 7-5 Cinderella. I still want to see the 8 best teams. I don't need to see a non-ranked team getting in just because on one day God shined a light on them and gave them a chance to win, and they took it. So I would be okay with if that 7-5 team wins the SEC championship or the Big Ten championship or whatever. You still say, hey, Ohio State or Alabama or whoever lost that game, they still did really good this season. They just had a bad day. Maybe their quarterback went down. Maybe they just, like JT Barrett, had 4 interceptions that he never has. I'm okay with you allowing that team in as another at-large bid, or looking at teams like UCF and saying, hey, the SEC, sorry, man, you had a 7-5 win champion. You don't get in this year. We'll let UCF prove what they can prove.
Yeah, I think this is the year there's enough Twitter outrage. People are talking, which might be exactly what the committee wants. Everyone's talking about it. But I think there's probably going to be some changes down the line stemming from this. Jim Delaney, the Big Ten commissioner, he swings a pretty big dick at this committee, and he can't be too happy at all right now. I did have to mention, though, we forgot another one of the big games from this weekend. Florida State beat UL Monroe to secure their spot in the Independence Bowl. So
Wait, was that a
congrats.
basketball game?
No. The Independence Bowl is going to be coming up. I think if you're free like December 27th or something, Florida State will be coachless playing that game.
Did you see pictures from that game?
Yes. It looked similar to what every Illinois game has looked like for the last 5 years.
It looked similar to a spring game. Like, it was bad. I guess they have some guy named Odell Higgins. He was the interim. He's been there since 1990-something. Kudos to FSU giving that guy a chance to coach, and it was good on the players to lift him up on their shoulders when he won and whatever else. FSU's a good job. And for the first time in, 50 years? I don't know, maybe not that long. 40 years? 45 years? We'll see what the market says FSU is like, because Bobby Bowden was there for 35 years, and they made their offensive coordinator the coach in waiting, because that was like the it thing back in 2008 to 2010. So FSU's never had to go on the open market and look for a coach. So I'm actually really intrigued by how this FSU's coaching search will go, because we've never really seen, other than maybe Penn State, have such a long period of time where they have to look for a new coach.
Yeah, it's definitely a good job, and we'll see what they get out of this. But to get us back on track, talking playoffs, I think we really found out what the committee values this year. Everyone's argument is a good win better than a bad loss? And I think the Big Ten, they do have some gripes. They play an extra conference game than the SEC. They play 9 conference games as opposed to the 8, which allows a team like Bama, instead of maybe having to go play Iowa, instead they're playing Mercer in November. So it seems to me that they value win total more than quality of win. And again, Ohio State had some outlier losses. That Iowa game is unforgivable. Clearly, the committee sees it unforgivable. But yeah, I think we learned a lot. And it almost seems hypocritical if they value quantity of wins like that UCF didn't get a little more love. Not necessarily getting the playoff, but they finished 12th. It kind of seems like the committee almost still has a BCS mentality.
Well, can I make an argument that you say that the Big Ten plays 9, but 2 of the teams in Ohio State's division are just god-awful when you talk about Maryland and Rutgers?
Okay, well, how good is
how much weight?
Tennessee and Arkansas and Vanderbilt?
Yeah, I mean, you're right, but Rutgers and Maryland are some of the most bottom. I mean, Tennessee and Arkansas, they're right there with it. You're right.
If you put Illinois and Tennessee on a field right now, oh my God, that would be I might rather watch like Little League flag football or something.
Hey, and I told you guys I prefer a regulation system, but you guys told me it was a pie in the sky. I agree with that, but it's the way to go. But, well, hey, USC and OSU, those were the 2 debated teams as to getting the 4th spot. They get a chance to play each other in the Cotton Bowl. Who are you going to take in that game?
I like, shockingly, Ohio State in this game. I really like this matchup. As far as the 2 teams go, I think it's going to be a fun game. I hate that it's the Cotton Bowl. I'm pretty upset that the Rose Bowl is a semifinal game this year, because you have the Pac-12 and the Big Ten champion meeting in a game that's not the Rose Bowl. In the Rose Bowl, you got 2 teams with no affiliation to the Rose Bowl, to the history of that game, in Oklahoma and Georgia playing. But back to the Cotton Bowl, I like Ohio State. I think Urban Meyer is going to come out, pissed off, and I think they're going to take it to USC. I think USC, they're going to turn it over a little bit. I feel like Darnold's been better lately. We've all been clouded a little bit by how great or how bad of a beginning of the season he had. He's been better lately. I think Ohio State can force him to do some things with that defense that he's going to be uncomfortable with.
Yeah, we saw this a couple of seasons ago when OSU played Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl. They took care of business. I think this USC team is a lot better than that Notre Dame team. But yeah, I think Ohio State wins it. I trust Urban Meyer and Ohio State against any team outside of the South. I'm sorry again that I sound like this big biased guy, but it's just true. other than that Alabama win, Ohio State has not fared well against teams from the South. So getting USC is a really good draw for them. The good news for Ohio State is they don't have to travel all the way to LA. They at least have, 1,000 miles tacked off of their trip by going to the Cotton Bowl. And they have to make USC travel as well 1,000 miles instead of being in their own backyard. So maybe this is a good draw for OSU.
Yeah, I think it's a good draw for them. I think Urban is the type of guy who's going to take this personally that the committee didn't take them. And I think he's going to try to prove them wrong and make a statement going out against USC.
So the next big bowl game is the Fiesta Bowl, which we could kind of label the Forgotten Bowl.
It's the PlayStation Fiesta Bowl now, right?
Yeah. Well, so I call it the Forgotten Bowl because once the month of November hit and these two teams dropped another loss, everybody stopped talking about them. Penn State and Washington. Penn State was a huge to-do for like 3/4 of the season. Once they lost to Ohio State, it's like Saquon Barkley who? Penn State who? Like, who is this team? Nobody talks about them anymore. And the same with when Washington dropped the game to Stanford. Washington became a ghost. I don't remember anybody talking about them. So it's an interesting matchup.
Yeah, Penn State. I think that they were that 4-hour weather delay up in East Lansing away from being a playoff team. I think without that delay, they beat Michigan State. And then in all likelihood, they would go on to win this Big Ten championship. And that would put them right in the playoff with one loss being a 1-point loss to Ohio State. So I think that the second loss obviously ended their season playoff-wise. But they got a raw deal out of that, I felt like, with the weather delay. I think it's going to be a good game. I think, again, it's two teams that match up well against each other. Penn State now has lost their offensive coordinator. I don't believe he's coaching in the bowl game. And that's kind of been their hallmark all year. They've been scoring a ton of points, which is not common for Big Ten teams. And I'm going Big Ten 2 for 2 here on the New Year's 6 bowl games.
That would be a major improvement from what you guys did last year, and I'm going to be rooting for it this time. I really want to see you happy. I want to see Big Ten country happy. I want to see the Big Ten turn around their bowl woes, and I think they have a chance to go 3 for 3 in the Orange Bowl with Wisconsin versus Miami. This is actually a rematch. I couldn't tell you what year this was. Maybe it was 8 or 9 years ago, but I actually went to a Miami versus Wisconsin. I think it wasn't the Citrus Bowl. It's whatever the other bowl game is in Orlando.
Camping World.
Camping World, something. It wasn't that at the time either. But it was like, I don't know, the Athletic Bowl or something.
Yeah, the Russell Athletic Bowl, right?
The Russell Athletic Bowl. It was a night game. I got free tickets. They were just basically giving them away, and Wisconsin just trounced Miami. And I don't know that they'll trounce them, but I think they'll do it again. I was a big believer in Miami. More so, I just liked seeing a new team. But Miami is still a year or two away, and Wisconsin is fully realized team. So I see maybe like another 31-17 type game for Wisconsin in that one.
Yeah, I'm going full homer and taking Wisconsin. Miami this last week, Clemson went out there and they Aqib Talib'd them. They snatched that turnover chain. And Miami, Malik Rozier is a good player, but he is a little bit turnover prone. And we've talked about it all year. Wisconsin forces turnovers and they score off of turnovers. And I think that's going to be the difference. I see it a little lower scoring than you. Maybe like a 24-13 type game.
Yeah, I mean, so you just took away 2 touchdowns from each team, basically.
I did.
4 points for Miami, but so UCF got their New Year's Six Bowl in the Peach Bowl. They play Auburn. I think Auburn's beat up, and I think UCF is hungry. They're playing with a chip on their shoulder. I don't really see Scott Frost letting this team. I think he'll feel really, really bad for leaving UCF if he leaves them with a loss. I really see UCF just taking it to Auburn and beating them at their own game.
I hope so. I think Auburn is one of the toughest draws in this New Year's Six for them. I would have picked UCF probably against Miami. I would have loved to see UCF play USC. I think that game would have been another one of UCF's like 50-43 games or something.
Right.
I don't know if they can match the physicality of Auburn. And if Auburn starts running the ball well, and UCF, they do have, what's that linebacker? Shaq something?
Shaquem
Great
Griffin?
play. Yeah, great player.
If they
but I
if they
don't
play
know
a
if it'll be
running
enough.
game, I think if they play a running game, I think that plays into UCF's hands. UCF's defense has more or less been suspect in the passing defense the last couple of weeks. They've held their own with the running game, so we'll see. They have the athletes, they have the speed and the talent. I'm going full homer, though. I still believe UCF is going to win this game, and I think they win by 2 or 3 possessions.
I really do hope so. And we talked about how Auburn kind of exerted everything they have for these last 3 big games they had. So it could be they come out flat. Definitely UCF is the team with more to play for, going for the undefeated season. And, I mean, how much does a Peach Bowl win really mean to Auburn? Like in their whole history of the program, does it mean that much? But it means a ton to someone like UCF.
Yeah, I agree. And, hey, man, it'll be awesome to see UCF get another feather in their cap, and I think that'll help them, especially if they get a coach like Kevin Sumlin. Man, if they don't come in ranked in the top 15 preseason, then I'm done with polls and everything else, but it'll be great to see them kind of catapult themselves in the next season as like Houston kind of did last year when they beat FSU in the Peach Bowl the year prior, and then they beat Oklahoma, and people were saying if they run the table, they're in the playoffs. So we'll see. This Citrus Bowl, the next bowl game we have on here, I'm going to call this did they really finish 9-3? Or I guess Notre Dame finished 8-4. But both these teams had a much better record than I assumed they would have. But at the end of the day, they still finished right where they should be, which is in the Citrus Bowl and on the very outside looking in. Notre Dame and LSU.
Yeah, in a game that I won't watch. I have such little interest in Notre Dame. I don't know. This LSU team is the same as every LSU team. They struggle to throw the ball. They run it pretty well, and they play some pretty good defense. This is going to be, Notre Dame does have a pretty good offense, so that's going to be the story of this game. Can Notre Dame score on LSU? I really hope not. So I'm going to pick LSU 42-0.
Ooh, I don't know if it's going to be that bad, but I will.
That's my hope. These have all been what I hope to happen.
Hey, I can appreciate that. I do expect LSU to win. I was a big-time hater on Ed Orgeron, especially once they lost to Troy.
Oh, go Joe.
But kudos to that guy for turning around and finishing it out 9-3. I do think a lot of that is kind of masked with the fact that I think the SEC is down. But
yeah,
you still got to win your schedule, and that's what he did. I don't know what he did to that team to turn them around, because once they lost to Troy, their only other loss was to Alabama, which they did basically what LSU always does, is they play them close, but then they lose in the end by a couple of scores. So I look for LSU to win this game. We'll go over many more bowl games. I think we should talk about doing a bowl game special within the next couple of weeks, but let's get on to these playoffs. You were mad that the Rose Bowl didn't have that tradition of Pac-12 versus Big Ten. This is kind of an awkward Rose Bowl, Oklahoma versus Georgia.
Yeah, who's going to go to this game out in Pasadena? I mean, is this going to be, obviously it's going to be like a sellout, but, come on. Like, I love the Rose Bowl. This is like, growing up Big Ten, like, this was it for us. This was the national championship, and to see 2 teams with no affiliation playing in it, I don't know, it rubs me the wrong way.
I think Georgia is a good team to play in that game, though, because Georgia hasn't won a national title since, I want to say, Carter was in office. So, this fan base is hungry. They just ran off a really good coach named Mark Richt because they thought he couldn't get them over the hump. And now they are 2 wins away from getting over the hump. So look for that fan base to show out. And I think Oklahoma travels well.
Yeah.
Look for that fan base to show out. They're not going to have any troubles filling up that stadium. But I think Oklahoma will be too much. Auburn, even though they lost to Georgia, they got blown out. I think they gave the blueprint on how to beat Georgia. And Baker Mayfield is 100 times better than the quarterback at Auburn, and I think they're going to expose Georgia. I think Oklahoma finally gets over this sort of slump they've been in playing against SEC teams other than when they played Alabama 3 years ago in the Sugar Bowl and destroyed them. But in a game that mattered, Oklahoma hasn't fared very well the last few seasons. I look for Oklahoma to win this game.
Yeah, I think this is a different Baker Mayfield, and that's the key to this game. There's nobody in the country playing better football than him right now. And if they score a bunch of points early like they have been the last couple of weeks, I don't think Georgia, relying on a freshman quarterback, he's the only freshman quarterback in this playoff. I don't think, again, if you give me the quarterback matchup and it's Mayfield versus Fromm, I know exactly who I'm taking. And I think Oklahoma wins this game. I hope they win this game because I really want to see an Oklahoma-Clemson championship.
Honestly, that's what I'm calling for. I think we'll go on to the Sugar Bowl. Clemson versus Alabama. This is going to be a really tough game to pick because these two teams have met 2 years in a row, now 3 years in a row. And both games were pretty much whoever had the ball last wins that game. The year before,
Deshaun Watson was the key.
Well, so 2 years ago, it was Bama had the ball last. They had left Deshaun Watson no time to really get the ball down the field. They left him in a very precarious position. And then the next year, it was Deshaun Watson who basically left them 2 seconds on the clock to do anything with it. And so we'll see what happens. I think this defense on Clemson, I've touted them all year, is an amazing defense. And one of the reasons why I've been so down on Bama is because their offense has been Jalen Hurts and nobody else. This is not the same Bama team that has a Heisman candidate running back who can consistently get you 5 yards a carry. There is no Julio Jones or Amari Cooper on this team that can break out and get you those receiving yards. There's no O.J. Howard, who last year was on this team, who will sneak out of his blocking phase and then go downfield for a 15-yard pass and take it 80 yards. Those players don't exist on this Alabama team. So it'll be hard to see them move the ball against this Clemson defense. So where Deshaun Watson's kind of moot at this point.
Yeah, I think he got him over the hump the last couple of years, or last year. I agree that Clemson's defense is going to be the best unit on the field of this game out of, both teams' offenses and defenses. And, man, Bama, they sneak into the playoff at number 4. Vegas opened them as 1-point favorites. It's now up to 1.5. So I want to know what people see in this Bama team to lead them to think that they have any chance against Clemson. Because I don't even know if this game's going to be particularly difficult for Clemson with how well the defense has been playing and how much Alabama has not only struggled in recent weeks, but struggled offensively all year long. I got Clemson winning this game probably, I would say, by 10, double-digit win.
I won't be surprised by that, but I think, again, it's the reason why Bama's in there. It's the reason why people have them at as a minus 1.5. It's the Nick Saban effect. It's the Bama effect. It's the fact that this program has just been a well-oiled machine the last 10 years. And I think we don't know what to do with this Bama team, to be honest with you. Because I've been saying all year, and it sounds like I'm going crazy saying it because they've just kept winning games, but I've just not been sold on this Bama team. And so, but people are because of the name. It's just what they've done the last 10 years. Is they just win games. And if anybody can beat Clemson in this first round, I think it is Nick Saban, and I think it is that Bama team who a lot of those players still have that sour taste in their mouth from last year losing. I think that's kind of what helped Clemson get over the edge of Bama last year was, hey, we lost to this team last year. We were right there, and we lost. So maybe Bama can take that and quantify it into a win, but I just don't see it. And to what we talked about with the outrage, it's going to be a bigger outrage if Georgia and Bama both get blown out or lose by 2 possessions. Could you imagine the SEC sends 2 teams and then they get blown out? The outrage will be even more through the roof.
Could you imagine the flip side of the coin and all the expansion talk being shut down, though, if Georgia and Bama win and meet for the championship?
That's true too, and that would definitely shut it down. And people
I'd
would
have to
say,
deal with all you Southern people.
hey, it happened with Ohio State when Ohio State got put in and people didn't think they deserved there in 2014. Ohio State shut that down by winning the national title with third string quarterback. And at the end of the day, we all said, the committee got it right. Even though a month ago we hated it, we have to admit to ourselves the committee got it right. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But I like that we're on the same page with the Clemson-Oklahoma pick.
I think that'll be the most entertaining championship game, and it's kind of what I'm hoping for because, honestly, I don't think there's a team in the country playing better than Clemson right now. And I think Oklahoma might be the only team with a chance to beat them, and that's just because of Baker Mayfield.
Yep. So I think that's it for the day, right? We went a little over. There's a lot to talk about yet again.
Yeah, big week.
We still haven't even talked about college basketball. I guess we'll have all month long to talk about that now that college football's over. Until what, Christmas?
Yeah, thereabouts. My main college basketball thought thus far is, holy shit, Marvin Bagley's the real deal.
My main thought is, yes, he is the real deal. But Florida gave Duke all they wanted, and, man, Coach White let the gas off the throttle in that game, and so Duke came back. But look for both of those teams to be top 4 seeds, without a doubt, come March.
Yeah.
All right, any game balls you got, bud?
I do have a game ball, and I think a lot of people could probably guess where I'm going. It's from the Big Ten Championship. My game ball is going to Eric Harlow. He was the head groundskeeper, not the assistant like Carl from Caddyshack. He was the head groundskeeper at Lucas Oil Stadium. And I don't know if you saw this whole development late in that game, but they brought the end zones in. They were not the normal Colts end zones from Indianapolis. They brought them in. They kind of like Velcro into place on the field turf. And during a goal line stand where the touchdown was scored, the turf ripped up at the seam. And one guy had his foot under it. So Eric Harlow went out by himself with a bucket of those rubber pellets, and he fixed the field. He was on TV for like 15 minutes. And shout out to him. Eric Harlow is a Purdue grad, so Big Ten guy fixing the Big Ten field in the championship game.
All right, I like that. I like that out of nowhere game ball, and I'm gonna give you mine. It's kind of out of nowhere. My game ball is gonna go to Michael Oresco. He's the commissioner of the American Athletic Conference. He started this whole hashtag Power 6. He's been really pushing his league to get into the Power 6, and hey, man, he put his chips on the table, and UCF and Memphis, I think, delivered. Maybe people won't believe that UCF or Memphis or the rest of the American League is a Power 5 conference or a Power 6 conference, but you cannot deny how good those teams were and how entertaining they are. And I think, once again, UCF and USF drew in good numbers on TV ratings. I think UCF and Memphis will draw in awesome ratings as well once that comes out on Monday. And this guy has been doing wonders. He got dealt a deck that he basically took a defunct Big East and has made it into a conference that is by far the best Group of 5 conference. No other conference in that Group of 5 even comes close. So I'm going to give my game ball to that guy for organizing and basically doing the best that he can with the cards that he's been dealt.
Nice, I like it. Yeah, every game UCF or Memphis has played this year has been just wildly entertaining, and that can be something big for them to build on and to sell going forwards. And like you said, if they outdraw that Big 12 championship game, I mean, you can start selling that sort of entertainment to the networks, getting some contracts. So, right. Yeah, hats off to them.
And then you got Navy. They were a good addition to the American Athletic Conference. That's obviously a nationwide thing where anybody who's associated with the Navy watches that, and they've been taking Notre Dame, making them nervous year in and year out now. SMU is finally getting back. They found some good footing. Obviously, USF is really good. So, I mean, the American Athletic Conference, again, it's just, when you look at the Mountain West Conference, USA, the MAC, they just don't compare, I don't think, to the American. And maybe I'm being a homer, but so yeah, game ball to Mike Oresco, the commissioner.
All right.
All right, man, that's our show. It was a good one. We went a little long, but there was just so much to talk about. So we'll wrap it up with Go Knights, Go Gators.
Go Illini.
All right, see ya.
Later.